This video will explore some of the main advantages and disadvantages of direct democracy. We understand that direct democracy is the purest form of democracy, but this does not necessarily mean that it's a flawless form of the concept. We're going to assess direct democracy in terms of its practicality, accountability, opportunities to represent the people, and allow the people to participate in politics and political decision-making. Let us begin by considering the practicalities of a direct democracy. We have seen from the example of the Swiss cantons that direct democracy can work in the modern era and not simply within the unique context of ancient Athens. Citizens living within direct democratic systems, such as the Swiss cantons, report high levels of satisfaction. A report published by the University of Bern in 2010 found that frequent use of direct democracy tends to be related to higher satisfaction with democracy, and in this sense strengthens citizens' confidence in government. Researchers also found that when people feel engaged in society, there is greater political trust and higher turnout levels. While direct democracy may work in some contexts, the logistics of organising and processing multiple referendums in a country with a large population would be impractical and costly. Take the example of the USA with a population of 326.7 million, or India with a population of 1.3 billion people. How easy would it be to organise direct democracy in these countries? Making the electorate aware of the contested issue, educating the people so that they may make an informed decision, setting up polling booths, developing a voting app, checking and verifying the result would be expensive and incredibly complex. Perhaps direct democracy can function in the Swiss cantons because of its small population of 8.2 million, and because this system has a historic precedent. Let us now consider how representative direct democracy is in relation to a number of referendums. The Brexit referendum saw a turnout of 72.2%, and the Scottish independence referendum of 2014 saw the highest recorded turnout, 84.6%, for an election or referendum in the UK since 1910. This could suggest that direct democracy can result in greater participation by the people, making it a superior form of democracy. However, the Scottish independence referendum is perhaps an anomaly. The alternative vote referendum, which asked the electorate if it wanted to get rid of the first-past-the-post electoral system for electing MPs into the Westminster Parliament, recorded a turnout of just 42%. This was the first national referendum to be held across the whole of the UK in the 21st century. Perhaps it could be argued that turnout is directly related to the perceived importance of the issue being voted on. That said, a referendum held in Puerto Rico in 2017 on its political status recorded a historically low turnout figure of 23%. Citizens were asked to vote on becoming a state of the United States, independence or free association, or maintaining the current status. The result was 97% in favour of statehood. It is the case that some citizens may have decided to boycott the referendum over anger about the labelling of Puerto Rico as a colony of the USA. The overwhelming support for statehood did not mean that Puerto Rico would automatically become a US state. US Congress was not bound by the result. It is possible that a continual requirement for citizens to engage in direct democracy may result in voter apathy, which could result in lower turnout and an unrepresentative result. In February 2019, a popular initiative referendum was called in Switzerland named Stop the Sprawl, which would have prevented building zones being expanded. Turnout was just 37.9%, with 63.7% of voters voting against the initiative. Swiss citizens were asked to vote in 13 national referendums in 2016, 7 in 2017, and 10 in 2018. Turnout in Swiss canton referendums tends to be lower than turnout for elections, and this means that a small minority may be able to make decisions within a national context which affect everybody. This could undermine the legitimacy of the decisions made, despite the legality and acceptance of this process. Traditional conservative Thomas Hobbes had a pessimistic view of human nature and found people to be in need of guidance. Therefore, he would not have been an advocate for direct democracy. Hobbes believed that people were irrational and could make hasty decisions driven by their own selfish passions. In fact, Hobbes was not a supporter of democracy in any form, preferring absolute authority of a strong sovereign rather than a consultation of the people. Democracy for Hobbes was akin to anarchy. The UK, and in particular the USA, are stifled by the monopoly of two main political parties, and this can inhibit other political voices realistically gaining control of the political platform. Direct democracy removes the need for political parties. Although the Swiss cantons operate a hybrid direct representative democracy, in a pure direct democracy, no political parties would need to exist. This would mean that every eligible citizen would be able to express their views directly, rather than vote for a representative they hope will do as they claimed in their political campaign and manifesto. This is an argument to support the view that in terms of representation, direct democracy could be considered to be a superior form of democracy. Direct democracy should also allow for greater political representation, considering that there are no financial barriers to entry. US presidential elections are a particularly expensive venture. Publicity material, air travel, staff, TV advertising, etc. soon adds up. In the 2016 campaign, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton spent a combined $1.16 billion. Clinton spent almost twice as much as Trump. Including all of the candidates in 2016, the election cost a total of $2.4 billion. To win the 2004 election, George W. Bush spent $345 million. Barack Obama spent $730 million in his 2008 campaign and $722.4 million to win re-election in 2012. Trump's re-election campaign has set a figure of $1 billion as a fundraising target for the 2020 election. It is clear that politics is an expensive business, but perhaps representative democracy is the most expensive form given the amount of money required to even be considered for election. Without political representatives, it is the case that these vast sums, which are mainly accumulated via fundraising or donations, could be spent on public services that would benefit directly the majority of the people. A 2018 report of members of the US Congress, which includes the House of Representatives and the Senate, identified the wealthiest senators and representatives. The Republican senator for Georgia, Kelly Loeffler, showed a net worth of $500 million. Approximately half of all US senators are estimated to have a net worth of at least $1 million. The current US Congress contains 75 male and 25 female senators. Critics of representative democracy would point to the fact that these figures do not represent adequately the population of women in the USA, which is around 51%. In a direct democracy, the clear requirement for wealth and imbalances of gender and ethnicity, particularly in the US context, would be eradicated, widening the scope for political participation. People may then feel empowered and more represented if they can represent themselves. Proponents of direct democracy would argue that when people are able to represent themselves and vote on policies and issues, they are much more likely to be accountable for their actions. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a citizen of the Republic of the Swiss Canton of Geneva and a philosopher of the Enlightenment period, is one such proponent of direct democracy. Rousseau's ideal society would be one in which citizens were directly involved in the creation of laws which would govern their lives. Rousseau believed that any law that was not created directly by the people was not valid. Rousseau also believed that in general, people would not vote selfishly, but instead vote for what would benefit everyone. In his work, The Social Contract, published in 1762, he declared, "The general will is always right." Rousseau's blueprint for such a political community would require discussion to establish the general will and an agreement. This is the social contract he wrote about, the idea that the general will is sovereign and inspired by the common good. The people will obey the laws made because collectively they were the authors of the law. A criticism of Rousseau's political philosophy relates to the practicalities of a direct democracy as a political structure and the idea that anything like a general will could ever truly exist. The notion that human beings can by their nature be untrustworthy and selfish, according to traditional conservative theorists, also discredits Rousseau's more optimistic vision of an altruistic, cooperative electorate committed to discussion and education. So we can conclude that there are clear advantages and disadvantages to a political system based on direct democracy, especially in relation to practicality, accountability, representation, and participation.